Last month, Robinhood went down during one of the biggest stock market crashes ever, and a lot of people got mad at them because they couldn't panic sell out of their stocks. But maybe Robinhood did this on purpose. Maybe they're trying to train us to all become long-term focused value investors. After all, you can't panic sell your stocks if you can't get into your account. Modern problems require modern solutions. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm drinking my Earl Grey Tim Hortons branded tea today, and it's another day in self-quarantine. And you know what that means. Quarantine memes. Here we go. Hope you guys like that new intro. Today we got another highly requested video today. We're doing a stock portfolio reveal for April 2020. Now I know it's not April yet and it's still March, but I doubt my portfolio will change that much between now and then. So I'm just gonna go ahead and reveal my portfolio now. Now keep in mind, for privacy reasons, I'm only going to be revealing the percentages at this point. But maybe in the future I'll reveal the actual dollar amount. But the reason why I'm revealing only the percentages is also because I think that your strategy shouldn't change that much depending on how much money you have, right? So whether you have, I don't know, let's say $10,000 or $100,000 or $1 million, your portfolio should be relatively diversified and your strategy should be relatively similar regardless of how much money you have. Now, if you only have $100 to throw around, or if you have several $1,000,000 to throw around, so let's say you're on either two of the extremes, then maybe you should change up your strategy a bit. But I think for the vast majority of us who's somewhere in between, then your strategy shouldn't really change that much depending on how much money you have. So that's why I'm only going to reveal the percentages. So I'll put up the pie graph right now and you can see the portfolio breakdown in terms of percentage. Now I won't talk about all of those stocks because I already talked about a lot of them in other videos. For example, I've already talked about Tesla a lot. Please go watch that video. I'll leave the link down in the description in case you haven't seen it. So I've already done a full video on my analysis of Tesla and why I believe in them so much, and as you can see, it's one of my biggest holdings in my portfolio. So yeah, please go watch that Tesla video if you haven't already. Don't forget to give this video a like, because I put in a lot of effort into making this video, and that's all the payment that I asked for. And now for today, I'll pick 3 stocks, and I'll only talk about those 3 stocks. And this is not a full analysis of these 3 stocks, by the way. I'm just gonna quickly talk about what my bull thesis is. And if you guys want, I can make a full video on any of them. So please leave down in the comments if you think that you would like to see that. Otherwise, I'm just going to briefly talk about the 3 and then we'll go from there. So the first stock that I want to talk about is Facebook. Now, I know I already talked about Facebook a bit in a previous video too, but I'll elaborate a bit more on Facebook just because it's my biggest holding, as you can see in that stock portfolio pie chart. So if you don't know what Facebook is by this point, I don't even know what to tell you. You've probably been living under a rock. So of course you know what Facebook is and you know what they do. So Facebook, they own WhatsApp, they own Instagram, as well as the Facebook platform themselves. And I use Facebook Messenger as my primary texting service between all my friends. And I just think that Facebook is so dominant in this social media space these days that there's really no alternative. I know Facebook has a lot of bad rep these days just because of privacy concerns, but if you really wanted to ditch Facebook, you'd have to ditch not only the Facebook app, but Instagram and WhatsApp. And I think that even though Facebook has sort of not the best reputation, it's really hard for someone to completely quit Facebook, right? They would have to quit social media as a whole. And I just don't see a lot of people doing that anytime soon. Now, as well, expanding on the bad reputation, a lot of people I know, they hate Facebook. But for me, I actually love Facebook because the reason for that is, have you ever tried to have a group chat with text messaging, with SMS text messaging? Now, I never even use SMS anymore just because it's such a barbaric technology compared to Facebook Messenger or just any instant messaging service. And now this might be anecdotal, but back when I was in high school, Facebook had the Messenger app built into Facebook, the app itself. And they made the decision to split the Facebook app into Facebook itself and Messenger. And at the time, I thought that was really stupid because I didn't want to download a second app just to use Messenger. But now that I downloaded the second app and I've been using it for the past, I don't know, almost 10 years, I think that that was one of the best decisions that Facebook has ever made, just because I find myself not actually going on Facebook, the app, that much, but I use Messenger a lot. And I think that that's very valuable because it just brings people together. I could at any time pick up my phone and just message anyone all across the world, and they would receive that message instantly. Versus if I were to text someone just overseas across country borders, then I have to worry about getting roaming fees and extra fees just because I texted someone that's not based in Canada. And I think that that's just really annoying, right? So I don't see why anyone would use SMS these days when you have Facebook Messenger or WeChat or whatever, all these other services that people use. And if you look at the social trends and where the engagement is these days, it's all moving to Instagram. So it used to be sort of Snapchat, but then Snapchat kind of started going downhill. And then from what I've heard, Snapchat's not cool anymore. Now, what do I know? I never really used Snapchat. And I never really used Instagram stories either. But a lot of people I know that have used both Snapchat stories and Instagram stories say that they actually prefer Instagram stories, even though you can kind of argue that Instagram copied Snapchat and just took that feature and put it into their own platform. At the end of the day, it's where the engagement and where the attention is at, right? And Instagram is on its way up, and I see Snapchat is on its way down. So I think that you're just getting a tremendous value buying Facebook stock right at this point. And even before the big crash, they were kind of undervalued. From a fundamental standpoint, their metrics, their forward PE ratio is pretty low compared to all the other FANG stocks, right, which are a collection of the biggest tech companies on Wall Street. So I think if you look at Facebook PE ratio, their forward PE is the lowest among all FANG stocks, which is why I've made it pretty much my biggest position. And I really do believe in Facebook's future. Despite all their privacy concerns and all their bad rep, I think they'll grow significantly in the future. And that brings me to stock number 2. And stock number 2 that I'll talk about is Shopify. Now, if you don't know what Shopify is, it's a service that lets you build your own website, and they'll handle all the transactions and all the data for you, and it also give you data analytics on your customers and really help you build your own business online. Although they say that their service is aimed at serving smaller businesses, if you look at their customers, they actually serve some of the largest businesses. So their customers, they serve Tesla, and they also serve Kylie Cosmetics. So I'm sure you guys know who Kylie Jenner is. She's one of the most famous people in the world, and she's purportedly the youngest billionaire in the world now. And her brand, Kylie Cosmetics, is, $1 billion business, and it runs off of Shopify. So everything just runs off of Shopify in the background. So theoretically, anyone could build sort of just a cosmetic business and then put it on Shopify. And if you were as famous as Kylie Jenner, then you'd make billions right away. It just goes to show that their platform is so easy and so simple to use that it appeals to both big businesses and small businesses alike. And if you look at the market, I don't think there's really any other competitor to Shopify. Now, you could argue that Amazon is sort of a competitor because you can set up your own store on Amazon as well. But I would argue that Amazon competes in a different way with Shopify. So Amazon is more about vertical integration, right? So if you have a store on Amazon, then people would see your product and then they would buy it. But then they would think that they bought it from Amazon because you're not allowed to really put your own branding on the box and everything because it would come in an Amazon branded box. Versus for Shopify, you really have the opportunity to build your own brand and to handle your own customers and interact with the customers. So if you look at the tech space, I think that a pattern emerges. There's usually two companies where one is very well vertically integrated and the other is very well horizontally integrated. Now, if you look at Amazon and Shopify, as I mentioned, Amazon is more of a vertically integrated company where they try to own every aspect of the business, right? They own the online interface and they own the supplies and then they own the distribution networks and all that. And if you look at Shopify, it's more of a horizontally integrated model where they just provide you with a platform, and then you as a business can sell to your customers and make your own brand and things like that. So if you want to compare another example, you can compare Apple and Google in the smartphone space, right? So Apple is an example of a very well vertically integrated company where they make the iPhone, they make iOS, and they make all the services that iPhones use and gets powered on, right? So they completely control the customer experience. But if you look at something like an Android, right? So an Android phone, a manufacturer makes the phone itself, and then Google makes the software for that phone. So then if you look at third parties and everything, they can integrate their services into Android, and Android is open source. So they try to harness a lot of aspects of different people's talents together to create a product rather than trying to do everything themselves like Apple. So there's these competing approaches, and I think both of them could work. Both Android and iOS have been very successful in the cell phone space, right? So another example might be Windows versus Mac OS. In desktop computers, right? So Microsoft is obviously horizontally integrated, and Apple, once again, is vertically integrated. So I think if you look at Shopify and Amazon, Amazon's vertically integrated and Shopify is horizontally integrated, and both of them have an opportunity to compete very well. Now, if you look at the stock chart of Shopify versus Tesla, I know people talk about Tesla's historic stock price run from, I don't know, the low 200s to $900 per share. But if you look at a 3-year chart of Shopify versus Tesla versus let's say the S&P 500, you'll see that you actually would have made a lot more money if you just bought Shopify stock instead of Tesla. And a lot of people don't realize that. And that's kind of funny because Shopify stock has gone up so much, even more than Tesla. And yet I don't see that many people talking about it. Now, of course, with the historic price increase of Shopify shares, their valuation metrics are crazy. I know you guys are probably going to get mad at me for defending such a crazy valuation, but I don't know. From my perspective, looking from a long-term perspective, I think that Shopify has a very bright future ahead of them. And plus, they're loaded on cash at the moment. So even if we do sink into a recession, I'm not really worried that they'll go out of business or anything. I mean, e-commerce is only going to get bigger, not smaller. And I think that Shopify's unique competitive advantage is so great that right now, at least, I don't see any alternatives or any competitors that they need to really worry about right at this moment. Now, I bought Shopify shares back in November of 2018 during that small dip that you see right there. So yeah, I'm still up quite a bit off of my position despite the recent stock market crash. So that just goes to show how strong Shopify has fared throughout all this crisis. Now, finally, let's move on to stock number 3. Now, stock number 3 is that I'm going to talk about today is Revolve. So if you don't know where Revolve is a company that sells fashion items like clothes, mostly for women. Now, you might be kind of surprised at why I would invest in a company that sells fashion, right? Because face it, I'm the least fashionable person out there. I mean, I'm not a user of Revolve's products, obviously, because I'm a guy. But even as a guy, I'm probably one of the least fashionable guys that out of my friends group, and one of the least fashionable guys you'll ever meet. So again, I don't know anything about fashion, right? So you're probably wondering why I bought this stock. Well, I bought this stock because I really think that Revolve is doing something different compared to the rest of the industry. So Revolve is an e-commerce platform, and they focus on selling clothes online, and their strategy is pretty unique in my opinion. So they use Instagram influencers and influencers on social media to really get the word out about their product. So their marketing strategy is fairly unique, where they're able to tap into the minds of the younger generation, namely millennials and Gen Z, to really find out what they want out of a product. Now, Revolve claims to use trend predicting algorithms to predict what the customer wants before they want it, and then see which products are selling well and really push those. Now I know this at first sounds a lot like snake oil. It's like, what are you talking about? Trend predicting algorithms, stuff like that, right? But if you want an indication of whether or not it's working, there's actually evidence that it is working out well for them, at least for now. So in their last quarter, they reported that 80% of their sales were sold at full price. Now, if you don't know how the fashion industry works, essentially is that usually retailers, what they would do is they would order a bunch of inventory, and then they would just sell whatever, see whatever sells, right? And then whatever doesn't sell, they would just mark it down and give a huge discount. And then that's where you see those huge sales where a piece of clothes might be 80, 90% off or something like that, because they just need to get rid of it, right? And now if you're able to sell something at full price, then that means you're really good at finding what the customer really wants. And that means you also don't have to worry about ordering a whole bunch of inventory and not being able to sell all of them. And not having to mark them down, right? So the fact that they're selling 80% of their clothes at full price is fairly impressive for a clothing retailer, I think. And furthermore, if you look at their average basket size, it's almost $300 per basket. Now, that's expensive, right? So I don't know, for people who are buying clothes off of Revolve, they're clearly not trying to retire early like me, because I ain't spending $300 on clothes on a regular basis. Like, what the hell? No, right? But once again, I realized that this product is obviously not aimed at people like me. Now, talking about products that are not aimed at me, they also have a brand called Forward, which sells really expensive and really high fashion items. Now, personally, I don't understand why someone would pay those amounts for those name brand products, but I know for a fact that people do. And I think that going forward, maybe this brand will also be very successful for them, because the margins on these items are imaginably very high. Now, another reason why I invested in this stock is that their growth is just very impressive. They've grown their revenues around 15% for the last 12 months. And even despite the recent crisis, they've had several revenue growth estimate downgrades. And even after the downgrades, they're still expected to post around 15% growth for this year, and then even more for next year. So I think before the crisis and the stock market crash happened, they were projected to grow at above 20%. Because of the crisis, obviously that estimate has been revised, but even then it's still really impressive that the fact that they're growing at 15% per year. And keep in mind, this is not some high-tech company like Google or Apple or Facebook, right? This is a clothing company, but I think that they've done a really good job of integrating their tech into their product. And I say don't underestimate the power of Instagram influencers, right? And I know that these days saying that so-and-so is an influencer, that's sort of like a buzzword, but a lot of careers have been created by Instagram and by social media, right? People who are essentially nobodies before can get several million subscribers or followers, and then all of a sudden they become famous and they build their entire career off of it, right? So I think that Instagram and all these other social media platforms, they've given a platform to a lot of people that to be able to grow their careers. I think Revolve is one of those companies that truly understand the mindset of the millennial and the Gen Z generation. And I think that that is a super valuable thing to have. But keep in mind, I just bought some Revolve stock just as a spec play. And if you look at the pie chart that I made, they only occupy a small percentage of my portfolio. So I'm not really interested in increasing it to like a higher percentage or anything. So I'll just leave it there for now and see where it goes in the future. But I think that this company could potentially have a bright future. Now, granted, I did buy the stock a little bit too early, so I started buying in the high teens range. So the stock has crashed by quite a bit just because they have a lot of suppliers in China. And obviously, as a luxury clothing retailer, they're very negatively impacted by the recent crisis that's going on. Whereas people are losing their jobs, they won't be spending money on clothes, right? So that's why the stock has crashed by so much in the recent times. But I think from a long-term basis and a long-term perspective, I still believe in the brand, and I still think that they're going to do very well. Anyways, as I said, I'm only going to talk about 3 stocks today, so I assume you guys didn't want to sit through a 1 hour long video, and this video is probably already getting quite long. So I'm just going to end it here. But again, be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and consider subscribing if you like this series. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'll leave the links down below in the description. And yeah, with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.